for the camera.
Start. Is the comeback on? 100,000% yes to chariot racing.
Yes,
Are you?
yes.
Of course.
I'm in. The Mandalorian is in this movie, and we don't know who he's going to play. Ridley Scott, are you watching? My name is Dr. Simon Elliott, FSA, archaeologist, historian, and broadcaster.
My name is Tristan Hughes, and I'm the host of the Ancients podcast. Today, Simon and I, we are reviewing one of our favourite films of all time. We're talking about it, which is, of course, Russell Crowe and Ridley Scott's Gladiator from 2000. But rumour has it, there's a sequel coming out very late this year, and we're going to be kind of thinking about and talking about what we'd ideally love to see from that sequel. The team, who you can't see behind the cameras, they have created these history hit cards for us, and behind each one I think there are some prompts or maybe some questions about what we're wanting to see, you know, as fantastic historians, ancient historians, about this upcoming movie. Shall we have a look at the first one?
Well, apparently they're the easy ones and they're the hard ones.
Well, but obviously, come on, they're more hard ones, so we've got to get through those first.
Sorry, you got to do that. I said you got to do the ones closest to camera first.
Oh,
I can't work like this.
I did say.
yeah.
Keep rolling, keep rolling. Put it in your show reel.
So we've got the team behind the camera. They have assembled these really nice history hit cards for us. They're prompts and questions, I'm guessing, about Gladiator 2 and what we kind of want to expect from it. So shall we look at this first one?
You do the first one. You asked the first one.
Okay. One word. When?
When? There's absolutely no doubt whatsoever this movie will be set in the Severan era with the Severan dynasty. Severus becomes the emperor in 193, the winner of the year of the five emperors. He dies in York in the freezing British winter, February 211. And then his sons Caracalla and Geta, who are both on campaign with him trying to conquer northern Britain, modern Scotland, they can't wait to get back to Rome. They hate being here. They're playboys, effectively, and they're really enjoying life in Rome. They've been dragged kicking and screaming on campaign with the father to keep them out of trouble. So they raced at each other with their own entourages back to Rome separately because they hated each other. Psychotically hated each other. Especially Caracalla, who I think was really genuinely psychotic. He was a very violent individual. By the end of the year, Caracalla had killed Geta, either stabbed him himself or ordered someone to do the deed for him. Geta, the younger son, had died bleeding to death in his mother's arms.
This is one of the most infamous cases of fratricide in ancient history.
Absolutely right, absolutely right. So if you're going to have Caracalla and Geta in the movie, and they are cast with Hollywood A-list actors, then it's got to be 211.
You know what, if it is 211, that gets me really excited, because that means that at least part of it, almost kind of like how the start of Gladiator, you have it in Germany, the Marcomannic War, so in the north. You'd likewise have it in the north, but you wouldn't have it in Germany, you'd have it in Britain.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't have it just in southern Britain, you'd have it in northern Britain, near Hadrian's Wall.
Yeah.
If the when is like 210, 211 AD, that gets me super excited.
If they actually go down that route, it will be truly astonishing, because Severus has two campaigns to conquer the far north of Britain, and he only failed because he died in York in 211. So 209 and 210, both times he led 57 to 60,000 men. This is the largest campaigning force ever to fight on British soil, and one of the largest campaigning forces ever in the ancient world. So it will be a very, very big deal.
You get to see more of that Roman emperor and his imperial household, not in Rome, majestic Rome, but out on the fringes of empire, and how they have to kind of deal with that, such like a different way of life.
It could be in York, because I mean Severus came to York in 208, and then that's where he died in 211, based himself in the legionary fortress there, which is today beneath the modern York Minster. So he brought Julie Domine, his wife, with him. He brought most of the Senate with him. Crucially, he brought his treasury with him. The more research I did on Septimius Severus, the more I realised he was a very avaricious man. Money was very important to him. So if he's bringing the treasury as well as the Senate, that means we are in the imperial capital. So York was the imperial capital for the last 3 years of his life, and hopefully will feature as such in the movie.
If the plot line for Gladiator 2 is this young Lucius who we see in the first movie, he's grown up. So if we set the historical background, Commodus dies in 192 when he is assassinated. This figure of Lucius Verus is not a historically accurate figure, but we're going to go there anyway. But let's say it's like 15 years later, maybe 20 years later. That would put you slap bang near the time of 211 that you were talking about there. So chronologically speaking, that jump from Gladiator 1 to Gladiator 2 it does make a lot of sense if it is around that time.
It does, absolutely spot on.
Come on, let's move on. You want to pick this question?
I do
Come
this
on, I've done
question.
this one. The team behind the camera are telling me just to chuck it, so there we go.
Actually.
Do you like that? It kind of went like a psh. Anyway, come on, what's the next one?
So the next question is, Tris, it's a really, really hard question.
Right, okay, go on then.
Where's it set?
Where? God, all right, we're going to be, it's like we're talking the same thing again, isn't it? Or where would we like it to be set? Now, of course, we talked a bit about Britain already, and I would love to see part of it in northern Britain. One of my favourite parts of the original Gladiator is actually seeing the arena, but the Gladiator, the amphitheatre, but the one not in Rome, not the Colosseum, the one in North Africa, the provinces. And to highlight the fact that gladiatorial games and combat, this wasn't just big in Rome, it was big all across the empire.
Was, yeah.
So wouldn't it be amazing if part of it was set in northern Britain, in York or somewhere, and then there is another provincial amphitheatre there where there are gladiatorial spectacles. The other thing I would say is, and I know you're going to pick me up on this straight away, Septimius Severus, North African origins. So it would be great to see him in North Africa, or to see that part of the empire, particularly with his, what's the word? I mean, his support, really wanting to big up the infrastructure of that part of the empire.
3 points, Tristan, actually. Firstly, Rome, definitely, of course. Secondly, I too would love to see Northern Britain. An interesting point, actually, to reflect on there is the fact about arenas. So every Roman legionary fortress and many forts had an amphitheatre.
Oh, of course.
Right. Now, we know in York, it was founded by 9 Hispana, later taken over by 6 Victrix. This is the only legionary fortress in Britain where we haven't found the amphitheatre. But there would have been one there. So actually, it might prompt people to actually look for where the amphitheatre is in York if York features in the movie, which might be a really good thing. I'm an archaeologist. That really, really appeals to me. Secondly, North Africa. Oh my God. I cannot emphasise how important North Africa was to the Roman Empire. We think of the Roman Empire through the prism of our world today, and we're in Northern Europe at the moment, Northwestern Europe. The Roman Empire was a Mediterranean empire. So North Africa was as integral as Italy or Spain or the East or the Balkans or Anatolia. It was an absolutely fully functioning, full fat part of the Roman Empire, and it was the richest part of the Roman Empire. It was the richest in terms of wealth. It was the richest in terms of literary culture. It was the richest in terms of legal opinion. It was a powerhouse for the Roman Empire.
You know what? One last thing from me, like an extra, kind of keeping on Britain. I would love to see a bit north of Hadrian's Wall. Now, is it Trimontium, which has the most northern known arena or amphitheatre in the known world, which is in the borders of Scotland? Of course, as Septimius Severus, he has that massive campaign beyond Hadrian's Wall. I mean, that would be absolutely incredible. But I think maybe that's too much of a stretch. Now, we've got some clues, ideas of where they're filming, but do we have any idea which of these locations? It might give us a hint as to whether they're filming North Africa at this time.
There's definitely been some really, really good footage of the sets they built in Malta, and we know they're filming in Morocco as well. And they were filming in Malta sort of at the beginning of last year through to when the actors strike in Morocco as well. So both of those, Morocco's in North Africa, and Malta, the way it's been created, could represent North Africa.
I also know that, because I've seen it in so many of his movies, and also it's a place that I went to, I can't remember the name of it now, but I think it's in Surrey, in that area. It was not too far away from where I went to school. There was a big kind of park area where I know Ridley Scott has filmed many parts of his movies before, including Napoleon and some of the battle scenes. I think when they're going to Moscow in Russia, they film it there. So I wonder if he will revive that again to also try and get that feeling of Britain, if Britain is also shown, which you've got to hedge your bets. I mean, I don't know. We could not know. But hopefully that is also a part of it.
I mean, you can only hope, Tristan.
You can only hope. Well, come on, let's keep moving on.
Next question.
Well done. Well done, there we go. So another simple one. Who? We've mentioned already, of course, Caracalla and Gysa and Septimius Severus. Those feel like central players, hopefully, in Gladiator 2.
But the cast is an A-list cast. And you've got Pedro Pascal, of course, cast in it as one of the world's leading actors at the moment. We don't know who he's going to play. There's a real chance he could be playing Septimius Severus. You've got Denzel Washington in the movie with no real detail about who he's going to play either.
Who else at this time is prominent that we'd kind of want to see in the early 3rd century AD, maybe in the late 2nd century AD, if they actually do decide to go back there.
I've got to say, Tristan, I have a feeling they may actually do something with flashbacks. Right? So you may well see the younger Severans or Severus in Leptis Magna as part of a growing up story, flashbacks to show how the sort of dynasty came about.
Potential way to get that figure back in as well, isn't it?
So in terms of non-historical characters or figures who may be historical but are key elements in the movie narrative, we've got Commodus' sister Lucilla and her son Lucius. And Lucius certainly is going to be the lead star in the movie. It's Paul Mescal, another Hollywood A-list actor. So Paul Mescal is playing the older Lucius, and we're just got to see where he fits into the movie. Some of the things I've seen are the fact that he's going to end up in some way, shape or form doing his own rags to riches story and ending up being a gladiator. Personally, I hope not, actually, because I actually want to see more about wider Roman society than just gladiators. Yeah. But there's one other historical figure which I really hope they introduce to the wider world, and this is a gentleman called Pertinax. Now, Pertinax was the first emperor in the year of the 5 emperors, 193. He was only emperor for 3 months, a worthy individual, wanted to style himself a Marcus Aurelius, said no to the Praetorian Guard when they asked him for some money, because actually the empire at the time was broke. And so the Praetorian Guard said to him, well, if you don't pay us, we'll kill you. So he said no. They came back a month later and said, if you don't pay us any money, we're going to kill you. And he still said no. Said, okay. And they came back the next month and they killed him. And that's what sparked the race which led to Severus becoming the emperor, because Pertinax was Severus's mentor, because he was the son of a slave, a manumitted slave, who had become Roman emperor. So it's the story arc that all Romans could buy into, that no matter how lowly your origins, you could succeed in the Roman world. All Romans up to the end of the 5th century would know who he was, but nobody today knows who he was. So he could be rehabilitated as a key central figure, because he's right in the middle of everything.
That's interesting. So you really want to see Pertinax. I think my 3, I'll go from least likely to most likely, and I've got 3 that I would love to see, actual historical figures represented in some format. I think the least likely, but the one I'd really like, is Clodius Albinus, because he is such a figure. So Clodius Albinus, also from North Africa, like Septimius Severus, and he is, I would say, Severus's biggest challenger to become the next emperor of Rome. Second, I would like to see the figure of Macrinus. Now, he is the figure who succeeds Caracalla.
Briefly.
Very briefly, but he's a military man. He's got that military background. And the reason I'm thinking that is because, of course, one of the figures in Gladiator, who I really like, is that Praetorian prefect, the former ally of Maximus, who then sides with Commodus. And then you kind of see a redemption arc from him as he goes along. And then at the end, he kind of, is key in Commodus not being able to beat Maximus in the arena. And I wonder if they don't have a Praetorian prefect, which they may well have, whether they have this figure to kind of represent Macrinus as kind of this ally of Caracalla or whoever. But you get a bit of suspicion about, because Macrinus will ultimately be the one who gets rid of Caracalla, who kills him whilst he's taking a piss, isn't it? Or something in the East?
That's right, yeah.
Absolutely mad way to go. Thirdly, what I think is perhaps most likely, is Julia Domna, the wife of Septimius Severus, outlived Severus, important in the reign of Caracalla afterwards, and Geta, you mentioned, Caracalla kills Geta in her arms. And of course, there are these other women of the Severan dynasty, Julia Maesa, Julia Mamea.
If I could come in on Julia Domna there, actually, I think in actual fact, she's a very, very powerful figure in her own right. I always think of Severus and Julia Domna as the power couple of their generation. And she was as influential in Rome when they lived there, for the 3 times they lived there, as Severus was, firstly. Secondly, there's one other figure actually now I'm prompted to talk about when you talked about Praetorian prefects. So Severus as Praetorian prefect for much of his reign until his fall from grace around 204, 205, was Plautianus. Plautianus was the individual Praetorian prefect, and Plautianus had a huge amount of power within the Severan court until he fell out with one individual.
Yeah.
Caracalla actually falls out badly with Plautianus because he thinks he's got too much power.
I had no idea about Plautianus at all, so it doesn't sound like he's going to be there though if it's a bit later.
Could be.
But there will be some sort of Praetorian prefect. We could hopefully they'll be quite nice.
Or a flashback.
Or a flashback, as you say that. Well, we've done who, enough of that.
So it's my next question. So the next
come on
question is, let's just Quite an interesting one.
Okay.
What?
What? Do you mean what? Okay.
Will it be centred on gladiators again, do you think?
Yes, I'm sure there'll be gladiatorial combat and a kind of a hero's arc right in the centre of it. Other than that, I don't know. I wonder if it is more about... So it may well once again be this setting up of this horrific figure. And it would have to be Caracalla, wouldn't it? And if Gita is also there, okay, there's that kind of incest idea in the first Gladiator with Lucilla and Commodus, which makes you hate Commodus even more. I wonder if in this one, alongside Caracalla, one way to kind of make you hate him even more is to kind of really put to the fore that fratricide, that killing of his brother.
For me, I hope it's not as focused on gladiatorial combat and the arena as the first movie, simply because that's been done. And it's been done amazingly well. It's been done better than anybody will ever do it again.
What's the name of the movie?
I know, but I hope the movie is the entry point for a wider opening out of a story which almost tells itself. This friction between these brothers who hate each other, Gita, portrayed by some of the contemporary historians as a mummy's boy, definitely not. Caracalla, displayed by some contemporary historians as psychotic, definitely was. And I think that story will play itself. So I'm almost hoping that the story of Lucius is a cipher for us to look at this narrative between these two brothers, because that story tells itself.
Yeah, and what I think something else that they'll focus on is just the huge nature of the Roman Empire at that time. And that is, once again, when we go back to the where question, this idea that they'll do some in Rome, but they'll do stuff on the frontiers as well. They'll do North Africa, they'll probably do Britain. They'll show just how large the Roman Empire was.
Tristan, I think you're absolutely spot on. I think you've nailed it. This is the Roman Empire, in actual fact, physically at the height of its power. So Severus increases, arguably for me, the borders of the Roman Empire to its greatest extent. And also, he's the Roman emperor who had more legions than anybody else. So this is the most powerful Roman emperor of all, of the Roman Empire when it's at the height of its power. That is a setting against which you could tell any story about the Roman Empire, but crucially this one about his squabbling sons.
You know what, that also leads me on to one final point there, is that in Gladiator, you do see the Roman army at the beginning with that battle, but then you don't really see Roman legionary soldiers at all for the rest.
Good point.
You see the Praetorians, but not much else in
yeah.
Rome. And I wonder, because of that military bent with Septimius Severus and those campaigns, I wonder if this sequel will focus, there'll be more shots and scenes of the Roman legions themselves in action, fighting, rather than the Praetorians in, the cosy, elaborate, Roman centre of the empire. So
I really, really hope so.
We interrupted this video with some breaking news. Vanity Fair have released some first-look images of Gladiator 2, showing the actors we've just been discussing in costume. This proves some of our predictions incorrect, but it also gives us a great insight into who the characters actually are. As we already know, Paul Mescal is playing a grown-up Lucius. Lucilla, whose role has been reprised by Connie Nielsen, has sent Lucius to Numidia in North Africa. This is a place she thought Lucius would be safe from the power of Rome. Lucius has made Numidia his home, with a wife and child. But unfortunately, Lucius's past catches up with him, and a Roman raiding party attacks his coastal town in Numidia and takes him as a prisoner of war. This is where Lucius becomes a gladiator. In the 15 years since the last film, Lucius grew up harbouring a lot of resentment towards his past and his mother Lucilla for sending him away. These emotions will all come to a head when Lucius arrives in Rome to fight as a gladiator and sees his mother Lucilla again. Pedro Pascal is playing a fictional character, the Roman general Marcus Acacius. Whilst not featured in Gladiator 1, Acacius is another character that ties the two films together, as he trained as an officer under Russell Crowe's Maximus. Pascal has claimed that Acacius learned from the best, so of course this code of honour is ingrained into his training and into his existence. However, like his former general Maximus, it seems Acacius lives a conflicted life with twists of his fate. Acacius's life is inextricably linked to Lucius's, as he led the raiding party that attacked Lucius's Numidian town and forced him into slavery. through pure coincidence. Back in Rome, Acacius is in a relationship with Lucius's mother Lucilla, yet is suffering at the hands of Emperors Geta and Caracalla and being forced to fight in the arena, where he crosses paths with and locks swords with Lucius yet again. Washington isn't Septimius Severus. He's another fictional character, a former slave turned slave owner called Macrinus. But hey, I mentioned the name Macrinus.
Second, I would like to see the figure of Macrinus. Now, he is the figure who succeeds Caracalla.
But sadly, not in this context. Another figure from history. Now, Macrinus, in the movie, he is a wealthy, powerful and flashy arms dealer who keeps a stable of gladiators for fun, presumably one of whom is Lucius. In Gladiator 1, we saw a great character arc of Maximus's owner Proximo, going from a tough, gruff owner to a supportive mentor who sacrifices himself to save Maximus. Now, I don't know if we'll see the same arc with Macrinus. However, as Scott has said, he's pretty fucking cruel to his gladiators. I don't know about you, but I'm pretty interested in seeing Macrinus driving his golden chariot and embodying the real people who profited from the darker sides of the Roman Empire. The Emperor brothers of Geta and Caracalla are being played by Fred Heckinger and Joseph Quinn respectively. Now, Geta and Caracalla, they ruled as co-emperors alongside their father Septimius Severus during the last few years of his life. And when Septimius died in York in February 211 AD, Geta and Caracalla, they took over as co-emperors, but only for less than a year, when Caracalla assassinated his brother Geta. And so, the presence of Geta as a co-emperor with Caracalla and the lack of Septimius Severus in the photos or character lists yet firmly places Gladiator 2 in the year 211. Scott has compared Geta and Caracalla to the story of Romulus and Remus, so I think it's fairly likely we'll see this brotherly jealousy, fighting, and ultimately, the murder of Geta.
Well, come on, there's one more. It's me this time, isn't it?
Yep,
one
your
more
turn.
from this easy pile, supposedly. So, historical accuracy.
Wow.
Ridley Scott, I mean, you know, he's fascinating, and obviously he's done an interview recently with Dan Snow, of all people. You know, they get on really well, those two, I've heard.
Yeah.
So,
Crikey.
we mentioned... The reason I love Gladiator is not because it's, you know, it is not historically accurate. There are so many holes you can pull in it, and absolutely you can do that, and I don't mind that. But it is that entertainment value which is right there front and centre. But if you want to learn more, this can kind of get your interest. This sequel, if done well, fingers crossed, touch wood, would have a similar reaction. What was this period after Commodus, this time of Septimius Severus? What do we know about this actual family? And was it as mad as it's potentially portrayed? So historical accuracy, I mean, I'm not holding up the biggest hopes, but I know they will be loosely based on historical figures in the time period, so I'm not that fast.
If you, Tristan, if you were to watch Gladiator now, would you think you're in a science fiction film? No. Would you think you're in a fantasy film? No. Do you think you're in the Roman world? Yes. So it's a Roman movie. I don't care if it's 100% accurate, because it won't be. If it's about 50%, that's fine by me. I'm there to be entertained, and I won't be irritated as a historian if it vaguely feels as though it's more or less accurate. And actually, in this movie, because of the time period we think it's going to be set in, it's going to be more grounded probably than the original movie. Because actually you've got a bigger cast of characters to choose from: Caracalla, Geta, Septimius Severus, Pertinax. You've already got Lucilla, you've already got Lucius there as well. So there's a bigger cast of characters. There are actors who've been cast who we don't know who they're playing. So Pedro Pascal, as an example. The Mandalorian is in this movie, and we don't know who he's going to play.
Joel from The Last of Us, yeah, I know,
Yeah.
I can't wait.
Yeah.
Speculation abounds, isn't it? About
Severus.
the
He's going to play Severus. You can actually make him up to look like a younger and an older Severus. Well, so it could help with a flashback.
I'm not going to say any more. We've made our points clear. We know it's not going to be 100% accurate. As long as we're entertained and it gets people, gives them that baseline.
Tristan.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
Exactly. Okay. We've done that.
So now we move on to the difficult questions.
Are they difficult? Okay,
I
I've
don't
no
know.
idea
Got
what
no
they're
idea.
coming.
Got no idea.
It's the next pile, so come on.
So, we're almost at 2. For the camera.
Start.
For the camera.
Is the comeback on?
Tristan, is the comeback on? No, it's not.
The thing is, but he is, Russell is so, part of the reason that I'm going to say this is because I want Russell Crowe on the Ancients podcast in the future. I've always said this.
Can you invite me on?
Russell, if you're watching, okay, I want you on the Ancients podcast. I've always said this, and you're going to come on sometime. I would like to see him return in some way, because he is also just the face of Gladiator. That is the image you have of Gladiator. And he kind of did die at the end of Gladiator, so that does kind of limit how he's going to come back. However, there must be some way that he returns. We talked about flashbacks. There are all these Titanic figures who then say, I've had a dream of someone, or an omen, or a bad omen, or a good omen. And I wonder if he kind of comes as that kind of that dream figure.
Actually.
For someone like Lucius Verus, as he's wondering what to do, and it's a dream sequence, and he's sitting with Russell Crowe or Maximus, and they're kind of deciding what to do. That's all theory.
Tristan, he's got form recently playing a role in the classical world, of course, because he plays Zeus.
He's king of the gods, yeah.
Plays Zeus in the most recent Thor movie, the Marvel movie. I thought it was a great Thor.
So what do you think? He's going to come back as Gladiator?
He's not going to come back. No, he's not going to come back. No. This is a movie about Caracalla and Gita, the psychotic fighting brothers.
Do you think it would take away from that focus on Caracalla, Gita, and Septimius Severus, your best mates, if he does return? Even in a dream sequence?
I as a huge fan of the movies, I look at the plot and I think it would overcomplicate the plot.
Okay, fair enough. What don't we want to see? With three people looking absolutely shocked, and they will be shocked, because there's a lot that we don't want to see.
Stop it.
What don't you want to see?
You start first. What you don't want to see. Gives me time to think about
As
what
huge a fan of Russell Crowe as I am, I don't want to see Russell Crowe as Gladiator.
Okay. Yeah.
It's about the Severans. 2024, Tristan, is the year of the Severans. It's about the Severans of the Severan dynasty. It's about Septimius Severus. It's about Julia Domna. It's about Pertinax. It's about Caracalla. It's about Gita. I don't want to see one of my favourite actors, Russell Crowe, again. He's played the role, done the role, smashed it out of the park. He doesn't need to do it again, right? So I don't want to see Russell Crowe back as Gladiator.
Okay.
Russell, if you're watching, I'm a huge fan. Love you on Twitter. I'm really sorry. Okay, really sorry.
So I'm all open-minded to Maximus Russell returning. I do not want to see mega ditches or anything like that. But this is perhaps the most unpopular opinion, and only one thing. I do not want to see naval reenactments or naval battles. Now, I know that they can be made quite cool, and there is that story, with reenactments, and were there reenactments of naval engagements? Not really in the Colosseum, might have been in the opening inaugural games in the 1st century, but they normally happened in a different arena near the Tiber, from what I know. And I don't think it's going to add anything.
And for me, I just want to see a battle in the ancient world. So if they do a couple of battles on the land or on the sea, I don't care. Providing it's well done, I just want to see a battle in the ancient world.
Okay, all right. Well, that was done.
Oh, hold on. Right,
Is it where am I gonna be in the movie?
Steady, go.
What's major battle? You know what I'm going to say. I think I know what you're going to say as well, but it's not quite in the time period. I would love to see Lugdunum. One of, if not, sometimes seen as the biggest battle in Roman history. And that battle was between Severus and my good friend Albinus, Clodius Albinus. But that occurs in the late 2nd century AD. So unless it's in a flashback of Severus's rise to power, I can't imagine them doing it.
Right, well, for me, firstly, if they were able to recreate the Battle of Lugdunum, which was the largest civil war battle, as you said, in the Roman world, Roman history, amazing. So Dio says 300,000 men were engaged. Well, they weren't, because the whole Roman military establishment at the time was about 330, 340,000 men. So they weren't. But also, I mean, we can look to the far north of Britain. So Severus dies in York in 82-11, but for the last 2 years of his life, he's leading campaigns, or rather, in the last year of his life, he's allowing Caracalla for him to lead a campaign in the far north of Scotland to try and conquer what we today call modern Scotland. And that could be astonishing if that's done well as well. So that's what I'd like to see.
Fair enough. Well, I think we're kind of done on that one, so let's go straight on to the next one.
Next.
I think we kind of know the answer to this one already.
Go on then.
Will this lad feature?
Yes, Lucius will be in the film.
It's
yes.
surprising, and it's revealed as well. It's not hidden knowledge.
Who wrote
It's
these
that-
cards?
This is like 20 years later as Paul Mescal. Yeah, exactly.
Who
So,
wrote the cards?
who wrote the card? Yeah, you can't get the stuff.
Sling it. Sling it.
Need better biscuits as well.
I go.
Oh, it's a vertical one.
Well, this is interesting, actually.
Oh,
That's a great question. So whoever wrote this card really knew what they were doing.
new kinds of entertainment. Now, I will say 100,000% yes to chariot racing.
Yes,
Chariot,
yes,
Of course.
I'm in.
Chariot racing is such a big deal.
Chariot racing, now that is an interesting thing. If you want to differentiate Lucius from being a gladiator, you make him a chariot racer. So being the Formula One driver of his day. Now that actually could really work. And it's very Severan as well, because when the Severans were in Rome, if you look at the Imperial Palace on the Palatine Hill, much of that was rebuilt into what is today visible called the Severan Rooms. So in actual fact, chariot racing would be a great route to go down.
It would be, wouldn't it? There is, of course, that other potential option, if you're right, in the fact that they want to differentiate Lucius Verus from Maximus by not being a gladiator. And it may be even more infamous than being a chariot racer or a gladiator. It is a bestiarius or a venatores, yeah, a beast hunter. And this would these people who came at the beginning of days at the games before the gladiators, where these beast hunters would be pitted against wild animals, either locally acquired or sometimes more exotic, tigers, lions. Now the animal cruelty question is no doubt there, and I think it's quite uncomfortable viewing if that was the way they went down, and I doubt it.
Having travelled extensively in Rome and North Africa, one thing that's really obvious everywhere you go is in the mosaics, it screams at you the fact that they're hunting wild animals for the arena. The scale with which they capture wild animals to feed them across to Italy was industrial, absolutely industrial. You have an analogy with the first movie, in actual fact, about things which aren't comfortable for a modern audience. So one of the scenes which was cut in the first movie was a scene where Christian mother and son were tied in the arena, and then they were attacked by a wild beast just before. And it's a very uncomfortable scene. I'm glad they cut it. So I'm going to go down the route of the Circus Maximus and the chariot racing Lucius.
You'd love to see that, and also provincial.
By the way,
chariot races.
you're the first person that's mentioned that, so I think that's a great idea.
Well, I am pretty amazing, so there we go.
Can we cut that? Crikey.
So, I like this one. I'm really glad that we've got a question on this figure, because we always think of Maximus, don't we, or Commodus with Gladiator 1. But this figure, Juba,
Yeah.
he's also brilliant. I love the story, sub-Saharan Africa, captured, passed, then made into a gladiator, wanted to go and see his family again, hopefully winning his freedom, and him having that. Is the last line of the film? Not yet, not yet.
Yeah.
I would love to see Juba return. I don't know what kind of role, though, I would see him returning as.
Well, firstly, I'd love to see him in the film as well. I think it was a spectacular character, very, very well acted, which it sort of like gave you the sort of the thread all the way through the film, didn't it? Basically, it was like sort of everything was anchored off it. A gladiator put in a situation where actually you can see he's a very moral man there, just trying to do his best and help his friends. I can't see him coming back in the movie, no, because I think actually, again, it's a plotline issue. It would overcomplicate the plotline when there's a new story to tell.
It's interesting, though, with Severus' story, of course, we mentioned all about North Africa, but he does do a campaign. You've told me this, a very rapid campaign into the Sahara.
Yep.
And those people called the Garamantes, who is always another interesting note, we know were like the prime farriers. It's horrible to say, but they were very big in the slave industry and getting slaves from sub-Saharan Africa and then bringing them north of the Sahara, and then many of them became gladiators. So you can see the historical basis for how a figure like Juba became a gladiator. Maybe that could be the only context in which you have Juba appearing, if they do go perhaps into Garamantes territory, but that does feel like a real big long shot.
I think it's a real long shot. I just think it'll be too complicated for the plot.
Yeah. Okay. Well, easy answer.
Easy answer.
Yep. There we go.
So we have two more. My last one.
Right.
For the camera.
Iconic partnership. Hans Zimmer. Oh, it's Hans. You know what? I think I speak for the majority when an unrealised massive part of the success of Gladiator is the music composed by Hans Zimmer. Others could potentially do a similar job, but he is just that man who you associate with epic movies performing to, its heights. I mean, Alexander, 2004, they had Vangelis, and the music for that was equally just incredible. But I think for Gladiator 2, you would love to see Hans Zimmer return and kind of continue that theme, that kind of soundtrack that has become so iconic of Gladiator.
Tristan, speaking as somebody who's in the mosh pit, at Reading Festival in 1992 to see Nirvana, music is a very important part of my life, and soundtracks in movies are incredibly important because they almost control your emotions. So the soundtrack of Gladiator is a stunning piece of work, and I can only think that with Gladiator 2 it will be equally as good. The soundtrack is as important as anything else in the movie. I agree with you.
Absolutely. Well, let's move on from that.
The last one then.
Because I'm not a
Poor old
music
Hans Zimmer.
historian, and I can't really explain more than that. So, oh, you would love this. You would absolutely love this. Will we see the Fields of Elysium in Gladiator 2? Now, you have reenacted this scene many times.
I've reenacted that actually for History Hits on the YouTube channel, dressed as a Roman legionary in a very ill-fitting piece of Lorica segmentata, when, as I was running my hands through the field of corn, I came across some nettles.
You know what? And the team are 100% putting that video on right now
I don't
to show it.
What do you think you're doing, you slovenly soldiers?
Because it's so associated with Maximus, and men think it may be a scene of an idea of masculinity or something like that, and going into the afterlife. But it has become so iconic. But I don't care. I don't care.
One word, Gita. Gita is definitely going into the afterlife. At the end of 211, so at some stage in this movie, Gita, the younger son, is going to be assassinated by his older brother in a fashion which will be like the Red Wedding in Game of Thrones. There'll be blood everywhere. They'll be throwing buckets of blood over Julia Domna. Gita is definitely going to the Fields of Elysium.
Yes, but he's not going to be one of the main characters, and because of that, they're not going to show him in the Fields of Elysium. So I don't think it's going to be shown. Because look, there were so many others who died in Gladiator, didn't show them going through the Fields of Elysium. It was only because it was Maximus, and he went through at the end because he died. I think it's only if Lucius or whoever dies, or at the end, that maybe they'll show it.
So that's your plot then, isn't it? Lucius dies in a chariot crash. You cracked the movie, Tristan. He's a chariot racer and dies in the last frame of the movie in a chariot crash. Probably with the chariot going, so he's flying through the air.
I just don't think it's needed.
Lands in the Imperial box. What a great scene. Ridley Scott, are you watching?
Would it be great, if you see at the end Lucius going through the Fields of Elysium, like this, running his hand through, and then you've got Russell Crowe as Zeus or Jupiter, just at the end, sitting down, stroking his beard, and then that's the end of the movie. Just a cheeky grin of Russell Crowe at the end, welcome, my friend. And then that's it. That's the only way I would accept it.
Tristan, I can't top that.
Last question, guys. Box office hit or box office flop?
One word or not?
One word.
Hit.
Hit.